One Piece Chapter 1190, One Whose Death is Celebrated, is about the heroic sacrifice of Scopper Gabban, the former wing of the Pirate King, and its title card alludes to the thousands of people worldwide awaiting the Pirate King's death and desiring his throne after his passing many years ago. It provides us with context as to what the Pirate King's crew saw at Laugh Tale and the destiny that awaits Monkey D. Luffy. Let's begin. In the last chapter, we saw Imu conjure the axe of Jing Tian, and as Imu was getting ready to strike him, Scopper comes in and blocks his attack with an axe of his own. This chapter picks up right where we left off, with Scopper Gabban coming to the rescue. We see him smirk, and he chops the tree Luffy was stuck on into 5 smaller pieces, and Imu looks bewildered. The tree trunk Luffy was stabbed in falls down, and the 2 holy swords leave Luffy's body. Imu is huffing and puffing while Scopper twirls his blade, and Luffy sits there still screaming in agony from the 2 blades that impaled him. Imu swings his axe, but Scopper manages to dodge and jumps up, and gets a good look at him, and sees him for how hideous he is. "You don't even seem to be of this world," he says, and to me this subtly and not so subtly hints at Imu being a Lunarian, a being not from Earth. His dark and dotted skin was already enough evidence for me to think him as a Lunarian, but the fact that an in-story character makes a note of his otherworldly features really solidifies it. And then when Imu asks him who he is, he says someone who understands this world, because Imu clearly doesn't, being a Lunarian and all. In the next panel, Scopper turns away from Imu with smoke and dust swirling around him. He sees Luffy writhing in pain and gives him a stern talking to. He says, "Get up, Straw Hat Luffy, and stop being such a disappointment. The fact that you had to rely on an old man to save you is pathetic and shameful." Though Scopper acknowledges Luffy's rise in status as an emperor of the sea and his strength in his new Gear 5 form, he tells him not to get cocky. Scopper gives Luffy the harsh truth, saying that if he dies here, then his friend's homeland will be subjugated by Imu, turned into a breeding ground for his soldiers. In the Straw Hat crew, they would either be forced into this or die fighting back. When you continually build up your name as a pirate in the sea, you make enemies. You make unwanted foes. Foes of a different kind, fighting from the shadows. Being the king of the pirates doesn't just mean having access to the One Piece and his treasures. It is an unofficial title bestowed to the one whose death is celebrated, because everyone is gunning for their throne. Scopper ends with telling Luffy if he thinks any part of being the pirate king is going to be a stroll in the park, then he needs to go home now. If he is not cut out for this life, then he is just in the way for those that might be. And Scopper's message to Luffy is straight from his heart, because later in the chapter we see what Roger said in Laugh Tale when they found the One Piece and how he felt, saying they were there too early, how they were waiting for someone to free the world from Imu, it seems like. And Scopper, knowing this and seeing Luffy's flippant attitude toward Imu, would anger him. So he challenges his motivations and questions his desire. In the next page we see Imu and Scopper exchange blows, Scopper with his axe versus Imu's ancient axe. And Scopper uses a praying mantis attack, which serves as an allegory for the fabled praying mantis attempting to stop an emperor's carnage. And this is a really impressive feat from old Scopper. He genuinely impressed me with this chapter. I didn't think he had it in him, but of course Imu scoffs at him for his jester act. Scopper asks if he wants to kill Luffy, and he says yes. Scopper then says that Luffy reminds Imu of Joy Boy, and that raises Imu's eyebrows. Imu now is asking Scopper what he knows of Imu, and the way this panel is illustrated seems as if the eyes circling Imu's head are speaking for Imu and not him. Imu continues to talk in third person, referring to himself, and that makes me think this version of him is almost an entirely different identity than the form that was in Mary Joie. We've seen him in his silhouette form and him transforming when he lands on Elbaf. So could Imu have multiple personalities? Back to the chapter, Imu conjures up another weapon, Onibami Tashiro, a sword dubbed Bone Eater. Imu wants to know the extent of Scopper's knowledge about the Void Century. We know how Imu wants to eradicate anything relating to that era, so he deems it necessary to take another one of his thrown swords out. Scopper tells Imu that he learned what he knows straight from Joy Boy's words. Scopper really couldn't care less about the man that Joy Boy was, but he says he is here because he wants to see his captain's dream through until the end. Imu doesn't even know whose pirate crew he was part of, but with the mention of his name Gold D. Roger, he thinks of a time when he commanded the Gorosei to erase Roger's name. Yet Imu questions why a crewmate of the Pirate King would protect Straw Hat Luffy, and Scopper simply says, because of how hard you're trying to get rid of him. Imu, being the king of the world, views Luffy as a threat, and making such a declaration is the realization of Roger's words, that Luffy is the person that they had and have been waiting for. And then Imu realizes his folly in marking a target on Luffy's back. He says he was impatient and maybe they attributed certain coincidence as being fate guiding Luffy in his journey. Though you can argue that the world government had been the opposite of hasty, they were late to the party in recognizing Luffy as a threat, really. Imu first and foremost should have known as soon as he saw Luffy's Gomu Gomu fruit or heard about it that he was a Joe Boy incarnate. Like, why didn't Imu call a hit on Luffy when he burned the world government flag in Annie's lobby? Or after Marineford? Why did it take until Egghead for Imu to make his presence? Why did it take until Egghead for Imu to make his presence felt? Like Imu says, they're definitely foolish, but I don't know about hasty. Alas, he's ready to put an end to it. Scopper realizes he has to do something to stop Imu, so he jumps up and uses a named attack, 8000/Grim Throng, and Imu with an attack of his own, Stig Hone Bomb. Scopper apologizes to the treasured Atom Tree for harming it, and Imu says Scopper thinks too high of himself, thinking being a former member of the Pirate King's crew will save him, even though he is way past his prime and old. But Scopper says the same can be true for Imu. We see the chopped up trunks falling into the realm of the dead, and they are so large that they destroy the snow-capped mountains in the underworld. And above, the people in the sun world react. Nami reacts to the sounds and thinks it's Luffy, but Usopp says it's someone else, and they're strong. They're overwhelmingly strong. The chapter ends with Scopper lying on the ground with his left arm severed from his body, and Luffy reacting in shock. Just like Shanks, Luffy now has to witness another friend of his lose an arm because of his inability to fight back. At least his face appears to look normal, and Scopper's sacrifice at the very least made him forget about the pain. But I wonder how Luffy is gonna heal from this, or will he fight off willpower alone? And yes, Scopper has lost an arm, but will this be the extent of loss the Elbaf group will suffer in this arc? Or will there be more fatalities later? I do think Imu will not win here on Elbaf, but he won't lose either. This battle will probably end in a stalemate, or somebody of importance getting captured or killed, but who is it gonna be? How will Luffy defeat this ancient demon? What will be the damaging consequence of the king of the world showing himself in Elbaf? Guys, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Did you like this chapter? Did you not? Thank you for watching this video. Like and subscribe, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.